All right, welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. We are once again coming live from Amsterdam. We're currently at DevCon, and I'm joined by Sebastian Goodwin, the Chief Trust Officer at Autodesk. And today we're going to talk all about trust, what that means to the construction industry, and a whole lot more. But before we get going, Sebastian, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I'm glad to be here in Amsterdam with you.
Yeah, I feel it too. I've been up since about 2:30 in the morning because jet lag is a delightful thing.
Oh, yeah.
But
I
I'm
know the
feeling
feeling.
good. I'm fired up and looking forward to talking a bit more about trust.
Yeah, me too.
You've got a unique title. I mean, Chief Trust Officer. It's not one that I see cross my inbox very often. Can you tell me a bit more about what your role tries to solve for the organization? And if you could share a little bit about what trust means to a company at Autodesk, I'd love that as well.
Yeah, sure. You know, in many ways, it's sort of the evolution of the Chief Security Officer or Chief Information Security Officer role, which I held for many years in many different companies. But when you think about it, why do we have that role? Why do we need to do security? It's because at the end of the day, our customers need to trust us and trust us with their data.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more to it than security. I mean, we have to have a great availability. We have to be very transparent with customers about how we use their data. We need to build things responsibly. So there are many, many elements. The security was sort of the narrow view, and the Chief Trust Officer role is the more broad view that goes from, what are we doing inside the company to build products that can be trusted?
Yep.
How are we treating customers and communicating with customers in a way that builds and maintains trust? How do we deal with situations that could threaten to diminish trust in a responsible and transparent way with our customers? And I think if we get those things right, we'll build trust. And there's also, I think the communications part of it is so important because also as a security officer type of role, you can make sure that everything is being done correctly inside of the company, and yet get no credit for it because the customers have no idea what you're doing, right? So there's that interface with the customers that I think is a really important aspect of the role.
I appreciate that kind of two-sided approach as well. I mean, everything I've seen from you historically has been very much like, how can we maintain security of information, make sure we're managing that trust successfully, and communicating that back to the customers, I think, is equally important so they understand
Absolutely.
all of the hard work that your team is doing and how you support the broader company as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about your day-to-day? Is there a typical day in the life, or does that kind of evolve based on what's happening in any particular moment?
It's one of the things I love about the role is that it can be completely different every day. Yesterday I was meeting with EU policymakers in Brussels. And today I'm here with you and meeting with customers. I already met with some customers this morning, which is something I love to do, to hear how they're using our products, to hear their concerns, to tell them, things we're doing to protect their data. But internally, I'm dealing with technical teams across the company to help ensure that things are well governed, that they're building products in a secure, safe, and reliable way. But I also see my role as, influencing the culture of the company across all roles. So It's not just building product. It's every single person in our company has a role that they play, right? In keeping the company secure and keeping our customers secure and maintaining reliability and transparency for our customers. So it's, I think it's a multifaceted role, and it goes technical, and I've always prided myself on being deeply technical. I came up as an engineer and systems administrator, network engineer. Now I'm getting really deep into AI.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I love it. I love learning the tech deeply, but I also view my job as very much, influencing behavior of people.
So your role has wide reach, which is really interesting, and I can understand why it keeps you excited because everything changes so much. One thing you brought up was the conversations with policymakers, and I'd just be interested to hear more about that. Can you tell me what those conversations are like and what kind of questions come up?
Yeah, it was a very interesting day. Multiple meetings with policymakers in Brussels yesterday, and we're talking about, of course, AI. We met with folks who are behind the EU AI Act, and members of Parliament who are interested in ensuring that their countries are innovating with AI in all the industries that they serve. And a big pillar of these AI strategies are manufacturing, engineering, construction. We had some great dialogue, one about how does Autodesk help with embracing this innovation in the industries that we serve. And Europe is a tremendously important market for us. Some of our biggest customers are here. I don't know that many people recognize that. Yeah, we're a U.S. based company, but the majority of our revenues come from outside of the U.S.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I spend a lot of time here in Europe speaking with customers, but also the policymakers who are trying to help industries thrive here in Europe. So we talked about policies that they're setting, both from a risk management perspective, which is, of course, very important from regulatory perspective. And we embrace that, right? Autodesk was one of the early signatories of the EU AI Pact, which was a voluntary thing. We didn't have to do it, but we were one of the first companies on board with that because we want to be at the leading edge of doing things right, doing things safely and with integrity. We talked yesterday about that EU AI Act and implementing it. And then we talked about, just helping our customers and the industries that they serve embrace AI and innovation.
Yeah. I can see why they're asking these questions and having these conversations, because the pace of development with artificial intelligence is, I think, in some ways equal parts exciting and also for some at least anxiety inducing, because they're uncertain how to manage this new technology.
Yeah.
And it's just encouraging to hear that they're trying to get out ahead of this to ensure any legislation that's enacted is done so with a lot of intent and a lot of thought. And I'm happy to hear that you're part of the conversation.
Speaking of anxiety of customers around this stuff, so one of the things we did very early on was we decided the best way to address the concerns is with complete and extreme transparency, right? And nobody wants to hear, the answers to your questions are in the fine print. Go read that, right? And I noticed that customers have a lot of the same questions, and they should. It's questions like, what does this AI thing do for me? How did you build it? Did you use my data? Do I have choice? Can I opt out? How do you secure my data in the process and protect it? So these are all very rational questions. The AI transparency cards, which I'm sure you've seen, they look like nutrition labels. And the idea was to create this very simple, standardized format. And we have one now for each of our AI features. I showed that yesterday to some of the EU regulatory policymakers, and they loved it.
Really?
And they were like, we should have something like this baked into the regulation. And I was like, cool, I'll share it with you because,
I love it.
Yeah, why not? So I hope we're able to contribute in some way to standardizing on some of this stuff too.
It's such a thoughtful approach, though, because it takes something quite complex and gives somebody a reference that is pretty easily digestible, regardless of your level of tech savvy.
Exactly, and that's the idea. It's a quick reference card.
Yeah, and it's complicated to stay abreast of all these different tools and technologies, and I have empathy for the folks that are feeling anxious. But to your point, all these questions that are being asked are they have a lot of merit behind them, and just grateful that we're in a position to be able to give them some certainty as far as how the technology is being deployed and what's in it for them at the end of the day.
Yeah. Transparency matters. So we did some research on the actual impact of these cards with customers, some customer research, and it showed that after customers saw the cards, they were more likely to try the AI feature.
Nice.
Whereas they had a little fear before, hesitancy, and this kind of broke down that barrier.
It's good to hear, and actually this tees up my next question really nicely. So when trust is high at a company, what becomes more possible? And when it's low, what do you think slows down or breaks down?
Yeah, it is so impactful within a company, to the culture and how the company operates, and actually it materially impacts performance and innovation. There's been many studies done. People can check out a book called The 4 Factors of Trust. The author, Ashley Reicheld, she has lots of other research that she's published on this. I actually did an internal talk here at Autodesk with her the other day, and we talked about trust within the company. Companies perform better. They treat customers better when they have trust inside. So internal trust is actually a prerequisite to getting customers to trust you. Why can you innovate better when you trust? Because people are willing to take risks, right? And companies where trust is low, people are less willing to take risks. They kind of have to protect themselves. People are willing to take risks, safe, in a safe environment, and they have that emotional safety, but also like well-governed risk, right? Not just taking outlandish and
For sure.
excessive risks. Yeah.
And it's always so intentional. And I think the communication that comes along with that conversation is inherently important, because if you're not telling folks, okay, like, we trust you to try new things and experiment with these tools and technologies, here's the realm that, it's okay to fail, but we have to make sure that people understand what that means. And, we're not, failing with whatever we're trying in a way that introduces risk to the organization. It's interesting with construction, especially because margins are so narrow, schedules are so short in duration. It's hard to find that wiggle room to truly innovate and try things where it's safe to go, well, that didn't work out okay, because that could cost you 2 weeks on a schedule, or, any myriad of challenges that come up.
Yeah, and what we've found is, I never want to be that trust org, that security or governance team that's just putting the brakes on everything. But, they say the reason for brakes on a race car is so the race car can go faster, right? And so it's about enabling that innovation at a rapid pace, but in safe spaces. And so that's what we've done, even inside the company, is to have safe AI development environments that are well governed, where our employees and development teams can go and innovate.
I'd love to hear more about how you qualify this. And I've heard you say before that trust can really be defined and measured. How do you break this down into something practical or something tangible that teams can act on?
That's key. And I'll take it back to the book I mentioned earlier, The 4 Factors of Trust. So it provides a really good framework for putting a definition around trust, and actually a whole measurement framework and a way to score it, which is really cool. It turns out Ashley, the author of the book, her uncle invented the NPS score, which, so many companies are familiar with these days. NPS score is not very granular. It's sort of like, would you recommend this to others? Yes or no, on a scale of 1 to 10, right? So she came up with Trust ID. It's a scoring mechanism, and it scores across four factors. And the factors are capability, reliability, transparency, and humanity. And if you think about it, all the things that really build and maintain trust can connect to one of those 4 factors. You have to be seen as a partner that is capable of providing all the features and capabilities the customers need, capable of securing their data, and then being reliable. And reliability is about the software, the cloud services, the availability of them, but it's also just being a reliable partner when it comes to support or customer success, communicating around sales processes. And then transparency, we talked about the AI transparency cards, but it's so many other aspects of the business. And then finally, humanity is about like caring for more than just the company's bottom line, right? Caring for the customer outcomes and the whole community and environment around us.
So out of the 4 you shared, I think the humanity one for me is the most interesting, because I always think about like the people that are doing the work, and there's so much importance in really emphasizing on their well-being, the way they feel, their contributions. And it's very easy to lose sight of that in the big picture of a giant organization, construction company with thousands of people doing multi-million-dollar projects. But like, the people at the core of it are the ones that are doing the work in the building. And so I just love how that wraps up all the aspects of trust that you're talking about here.
Me too. And, going back to the different elements of my job and my day-to-day, that's one of the areas I really love too. I spend a lot of time, for example, working with our internal head of culture and belonging in the company, right? Because it's about building a great company culture where people can thrive and do their best work, right? And that leads to the positive outcomes for our customers. So it's such an important part of trust that often gets overlooked.
I think most of us have had work experiences where the trust might not have felt like it was there. And so I'd be curious, Are there any clear signals for leaders at a company that would show that, trust might be eroded or not in a great position? I'd just be kind of curious if there's
Yeah.
any red flags that would fly up that people should pay attention.
So it's interesting that you asked that because we've actually instrumented that into our employee engagement surveys now. We've added some trust-related questions. And they're things like, do you feel like you trust people within your immediate group more than you trust people in a different department? Things like this that kind of give us an idea of the strength of the trust fibers across the organization. That's something you can measure over time. That's just one example, but there's some great information out there around like how you can add questions to surveys like this to gather information about internal trust. And so, yes, you can actually start to measure and observe how it drifts over time. And then you can be intentional about improving.
And I'm always appreciative. I mean, I can speak as somebody who takes that survey as an individual contributor at the company. I'm always grateful for the conversations that follow because they are very forthcoming. And, the company is very transparent about, okay, here's where we're doing really well. Here's where something isn't. And I don't think all organizations sit in that position to be able to talk so honestly about how the employees are feeling. But I'm grateful that, you're out there paying attention to how people feel as far as the trust goes. And I think it's just an important consideration for folks to implement at their own organization so they have a baseline, so they know how people are feeling. But again, I think it comes back to the communication piece where people know it's okay for you to fill this survey out or honestly. Like there's no punitive measure coming from you telling us how you feel right now. And it's a really good kind of circular conversation.
Yeah. We're all in such high stakes industries. The trust is just so critical. There are, other types of businesses out there where it's just not as high stakes, right? You're trying to, get someone to pay attention to a 30-second video or something. But we're building the world that we're surrounded with. Our customers are, right? We're providing the tools for that. And the stakes are so high that trust is really foundational to the whole thing.
Curious to hear when you're sitting down with customers, what questions are they asking you? Like, what are those conversations like, especially in the AECO space?
The common theme is their data. It's just such a high stakes environment. Like I said, the data is at the center of everything, whether it's a building or, maybe they're making a video game or a movie. We serve many industries. There's so much data involved. And they need access to it with integrity for a long time.
Yeah.
That was the theme of one of my customer conversations today. It was, we need the data not just for the next 5 years, we need the data for the next 25 years. And so, how are we going to make sure that it's there when we need it?
And I think that's a very different conversation than you might have had with those same customers 5 or 10 years ago. Just the intention behind data strategies at construction companies now and the deliberateness with how they're capturing data and managing and analyzing it. But artificial intelligence is dramatically changing that conversation because this data that you're talking about is the foundation of what happens next. And so I'd be interested to hear more about those conversations about AI specifically with folks, especially in construction, and how trust really factors in their decisions to use and implement the technology.
First, speaking of data strategy, one of the customers I was speaking with recently, they said that their data retention strategy was they had a big warehouse full of files.
Yeah.
Right. And that wasn't not too long ago. And of course, now we're bringing things, into the modern age on a SaaS platform, which is great. And now we're graduating to this next stage of AI. So I'm seeing a lot of excitement now. A couple years ago, we started out with some sort of fear, uncertainty, and now I think we're really in this era of excitement around what's possible. I mean, even here at DevCon, we've seen some really cool demos and examples of what can be done. And you're taking hours and hours of work and you're collapsing it down to a few seconds or a few minutes. when customers see those possibilities, because these things are becoming a reality now, we're not just talking about them.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
And quite frankly, up until a couple of years ago, like I was an AI skeptic, where I looked at a lot of this technology and I felt very uncertain or very unoptimistic about the impact that it would have on my own work, but also the work in, AECO or more broadly. And I think especially even in the last 6 months, the conversation has changed so rapidly, and it's quite exciting. But I think my skepticism, and I'm sure a lot of the folks that you speak to every day, is very rooted in that conversation around trust, where it's like, can I trust the output of these tools? Can I trust how the technology is using my information, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
And I think more and more, as we're able to assuage any of those concerns, whether it's tied to Autodesk or any other company, the uptick in the adoption and the enthusiasm, I think, is going to continue to grow. It's an exciting moment, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah. The positive impacts and outcomes have to be tangible, right? And what we've had before the positive aspects became tangible, we had fear, and we had, unfortunately, examples of AI being used in not very good ways.
Yeah.
Whether it's deep fakes or you name it, right? So it kind of gets that connotation, and then people are even more concerned because you kind of lump together in your head AI is just one big thing, but it's like it's completely different use cases. And a lot of the AI that we're building, it's not LLMs, it's not even the type of image generation that leads to deep fake type of things. It's about optimizing 2D and 3D geometry and things like this, and the math behind it, the constraints and the optimization. So these are the tangible benefits that we're now able to deliver. Occasionally with like an LLM style front end to make things natural language, but then you're triggering some much more advanced AI to go get the real work done.
Yeah, there's a depth of workflows and machine learning and everything that kind of comes in the back end of it. And it's not just, to your point, we're not just, creating images for the fun of it. There's a real aspect of improving and streamlining the workflows and reducing manual labor. And I know Autodesk has been doing a lot of this work for years. This isn't a 1 or 2 or 3 year conversation. This is a 5 and 10 year conversation. And I think that's part of why it's so exciting, is like the fruits of all of that are really starting to come together.
Right. Yeah. I mean, our R&D teams have been publishing papers on AI going back, more than a decade. I forget how many years, but it's not just all this recent post LLM era type of thing.
Yeah, I had a great conversation with Tanya Custis a couple of years ago, who leads up a lot of our AI research. And even then, before like this big groundswell has come into play, like she was having, like her team's doing some really cool stuff. I need to catch up with her again and see, how the conversation's evolved since I last saw her. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the actions we can do, maybe small everyday tasks to really improve and bolster trust. Is there anything, just as a baseline, you would recommend folks consider to just, do better about creating the trust within an organization?
It's really in everything we do. It's hard to name one thing, because it's from how you use the tools that you're given from like an IT perspective, and from, security perspective, logins, phishing emails, all those security basics that we train people on. Mm-hmm. But then it's the other things. It's your interactions every day with each other and with customers that build trust. Trust it's built up in little drops, right? But they always say lost in buckets, right? So every interaction you're doing is putting another drop in that bucket. It's about being transparent, being reliable, and showing up as that capable partner, both inside between colleagues and between the company and the customers.
Would you have any advice for if something goes wrong, and things do go wrong, of course, an unexpected issue, for example, or maybe rework and construction, schedule delays? Like, what does doing the right thing look like from a trust perspective?
That's the moment when you really build trust, is when things are not going so well, right? It's how you show up in that moment. And you have to show up with integrity, with transparency, with honesty, and just lean in and always think about what's most important is that customers, the impact to the customer, the outcome for them. That's what guides us through those potentially, trust diminishing or, crisis type situations. And we practice them, as somebody who leads a cybersecurity and, threat and response team and everything. We have tabletop exercises where we have this whole scenario that we're playing out. A hacker did this and that, and, got access to this data. What are you going to do now?
Yeah.
And you always start with the question, what's in the customer's best interest, right? Because sometimes you could discover a vulnerability in something, and if you just go announce it to the world, now your customer is more at risk. You have to always think in that moment, what's the best next move for the customer outcome? And then, and never optimizing for, well, what do you think might be better for you, to save face or whatever. That's where things can go downhill pretty quick. You have to be obsessively focused on the best outcome for the customer, which eventually will be the best outcome for everyone involved. But sometimes in the moment can feel very stressful. Like, oh, we're going to go tell them, something that is embarrassing, or we don't have all the answers yet. But yeah, sometimes you just have to do that. I think it's the same thing in the construction industry with our construction customers and their clients. It's owning the mistake if there was a mistake made, or just showing up with integrity in that situation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of maturity that goes behind being very comfortable with vulnerability in sharing bad news, or being very upfront about what's going on. And to your point, like, there's a balance there, because you have to be intentional about when, especially with a lot of the situations that your team might be managing. But even if I just think about it from an interpersonal situation, I very much appreciate and value when folks are upfront with me when something's not going well, or if they're navigating a situation where they don't know the outcome or an answer. It's like, it's okay to tell me that. And I try to make sure folks understand it's okay to come to me and say, I don't know the answer to that. And I've said this on Digital Builder a number of times, but I don't know so many things. There's so much that I don't know. And I would just assume have an honest and upfront conversation with somebody about that, whatever topic we're talking about, so we can get to the root of the problem or identify the outcome that's ideal, instead of trying to hide it and then go figure out the answer to it later. Like that, that doesn't have good outcomes for anybody at the end of the day.
Yeah. You reminded me, I was just at the big RSA conference in San Francisco, which is a huge cybersecurity conference. And I did a presentation for chief information security officers who are earlier in their career on leading through crisis. And I talked about this idea of leading with integrity and making sure that you always have the customer interest in mind. And one of the things I pointed out is that when you hear of a company doing this very poorly, it's not intentional. It's not like they have bad people there who are trying to, lie and be deceitful. It's usually a case of poor stakeholder management. And what I mean by that is, as a leader in that situation, leading through that crisis, you have so many stakeholders and advisors, and each one has a different thing they're trying to optimize for.
Yeah.
Legal advisors are there to reduce legal risk. Communications folks are trying to, maintain a certain image for the company. So with everybody doing their job perfectly, you can accidentally optimize too much in one direction or the other. And what keeps you grounded and centered is always thinking about what's best for the customer.
Yeah.
And the moment you let somebody be too persuasive in one direction or another, that's when you can lead to that suboptimal outcome of, well, let's not tell the customer yet, because it introduces some risk over here, right?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. I have empathy for anybody who's in that situation and in leading the response to that, because to your point, the outcomes are so different based on the person that you're speaking with.
Yes.
And it's very interesting to kind of navigate and figure out, okay, how do I serve the needs of all these different groups of people? But at the end of the day, I appreciate your point of, like, the customer's needs are front and foremost. And if you serve their needs, everybody else's needs will follow. It's just a matter of, what's the
Yeah,
order of operations and how do you want to execute?
it's the good North Star.
Yeah.
And of course, you still have to juggle all the rest. There are
Yep.
regulatory things and laws to follow and everything. Yeah.
Well, your job sounds complex at times, to say the
Keeps
least.
it fun.
But it's very interesting. I want to look to the future for a moment in the AECO industry more broadly, and I'm a techno-optimist, so this is always fun for me. What role do you think trust is going to play in unlocking what's next for construction, whether it could be technology or with the way we work? A very open-ended question, but I'd just be kind of curious where you think trust fits into that conversation.
I think that, adoption of this next generation of AI-enabled capabilities is going to require trust all up and down the stack, right? Customers have to trust the capabilities that we're providing, but their downstream clients have to trust that as well. And I've discussed with one of our customers at AU, actually. He told me that his client was very concerned about them using any kind of AI on their project, on their construction project. And he actually printed out our transparency cards, those labels that we talked about earlier, and brought it to the meeting with his client and said, look, these are what the things do. This is how they work. This is, how your data is used. And they looked at it and they said, oh, that's not a big deal. Go for it.
Yeah.
Right. So it goes back to that uncertainty and just not knowing. But I think when we push through that, through transparency, through education, communication, that we'll all be the better for it as we innovate and embrace this new world that we're in.
And your point about the education really resonates for me as well, because you have to really enable the folks using the tools to be successful, especially if they don't come from a background where they have used technology like this. And I've had a couple folks on in the past to talk about, some of the risks of using AI. And one of the first things they always say is don't put your documentation into a public-facing LLM. And you can see somebody who, is building a skiff or something very secure and technical. You're not going to want to put that up into the cloud in a tool. Yeah, don't do that. Do not do that. And so there's a lot of intention that needs to happen for the folks that are using these tools. And so it's just a very interesting moment. And I think we can empower folks to be successful, but they have to be very deliberate.
Yeah. You remind me of a conversation I had yesterday with one of the EU regulatory bodies around AI. And he was asking, well, so which LLM model do you use? And we got into that and we used different things in different places. But the key point, and he was surprised by this, I said, but that company doesn't get the data. It's different from the user consumer, right? You're using a public GPT. Yeah, of course, don't upload the data. It's going to them, and they have different contracts with companies versus an end user who might be using a free version, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Totally different thing. In our case, when we provide like Autodesk Assistant, for example, the model is running in an environment that we control. So we're not sending the customer data out there. And that's an important thing that I don't think a lot of people realize. It's hard to separate in your mind the model versus the provider of the model and the hosting of the model and the software that surrounds it. The model it's a math equation, right? At the end of the day. And we can host that in our own secure enclave.
Yeah, and I think a lot of construction companies are doing this now where they will deploy Claude or Copilot or any of these different models and get their walled version where you can ensure that your internal company data that your team uses in Copilot or whatever isn't out there in the world. And I'm very glad you made that distinction, because it's an important one, because you can use these tools securely and safely within your organization. You just have to be very intentional about how you set everything up.
And you can do it with the model provider hosting it too, but you've entered into that kind of enterprise contractual engagement.
Well, I've got one final question for you today. It's one I ask everybody, so I'm very interested in your response today. What is one tool that you use on every project you work on, no matter what you're working on?
So I'm a stickler for the laser level. I'm always like trying to perfect things around the house when I'm building something or hanging something on the wall. I just need it to be just right. So I've got this sophisticated laser level that has lines and a grid all over the place. And
Nice.
I can get a little bit intense with that.
I've got one of those as well, but I'm not surprised that you have the attention to detail given your role.
You would hope.
Where that comes into play.
Yeah.
Well, Sebastian, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and hearing more about your team and the work that everybody does to, just facilitate this bigger conversation around trust and security.
Thanks.
For everybody out there listening, as I mentioned earlier, we are in Amsterdam right now at DevCon. And so if you're an audio listener, you should head over to YouTube today to take a peek. If you're interested in reaching out, asking a question or anything along those lines, I'm the only Eric Thomas that works at Autodesk. Until next time, thank you so much and goodbye.